Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we dig into dense source material, pull out the clutter, and give you the essential knowledge you need nice and quick.
Yeah, today we're diving into some internal documents from a pretty dedicated general aviation group, the Colorado Pilots Association, or CPA.
Okay.
And these sources, they give us a real look behind the curtain. We're focusing on three main things: their strategy for the future, organizationally,
Right.
some really high-stakes local battles they're fighting over infrastructure, and a super important safety concept, really relevant if you fly over mountains, especially out west.
Absolutely. So our mission today, pull out the key ideas pilots in this association are talking about right now, how they want to grow, what they're learning from these airport fights, and crucially, how to stay safe flying in that, challenging mountain environment. All right, let's start with that organizational future piece. The President's Corner in their newsletter really nails a core problem for any volunteer group, doesn't it?
It really does.
Good ideas are great, but they only stick around if someone's actually there to, keep them going.
Yeah, maintenance is key. And the big strategy push for the next board seems to be this major restructuring idea. It's aimed squarely at boosting their fundraising and, long-term survival.
So what's the core issue they're trying to fix?
Well, it's fascinating, actually.
Yeah.
It's a common problem for nonprofits. The CPA, they're already a Colorado nonprofit corporation. That's established.
Okay.
But, and this is the key part, they are not a federal 501c3 organization.
Ah, okay. And for folks not deep in tax codes, what does that practically mean for raising money?
Well, the nugget here is that without that federal 501c3 status, they basically can't accept tax-deductible contributions.
Right.
Especially for the stuff they really want to do, like educational programs, scholarships,
Yeah.
youth outreach, that kind of thing.
So if I donate, I can't write it off my taxes.
Exactly. And that shuts them off from arguably the biggest pool of charitable money, which is individuals looking for that tax benefit.
So what's the proposed fix?
They see that the big players like EAA and AOPA, they faced this exact same problem years ago.
Right.
And they solved it by creating separate, dedicated foundations just for their charitable and educational work. So the idea is CPA should just mirror that structure.
Okay, create a separate foundation. Sounds like potentially a lot of work for volunteers.
You'd think so, but the source actually suggests the administrative load for maintaining it is surprisingly manageable.
Really?
Yeah, as long as the income stays under $50,000 a year. Federally, it's just filing a simple electronic form, like any postcard, the Form 990N.
Okay.
And at the state level, it's just a small fee for a periodic report. Main thing isn't time, it's just discipline. You need totally separate accounting, a separate bank account. It's about being organized, not spending tons of hours.
Got it. Organization, not just hours. Now, beyond the paperwork, they also talk about connectivity, right? Keeping linked with other groups.
Yeah, they point out that sometimes, coordination with state or national aviation orgs kind of falls apart if the volunteer who is doing it stops attending meetings. Happens all the time.
Sure.
So they want to fix that. Maybe create a dedicated liaison role, either a volunteer or a board member whose job is just follow up and managing those relationships, like proactive risk management for when people inevitably move on.
Smart. And there was another outreach idea, too.
Yeah, a really simple one, actually. Just commit to doing annual, 5-minute in-person visits to other local aviation groups.
Oh, like the EAA chapters, the 99s?
Exactly. WAI too. Just
Yeah.
pop in, remind them CPA exists, and directly ask for their member support. Face-to-face makes a difference.
Makes sense. They also flagged some internal issues with their airport reps program. Sounded like some friction there.
Yeah, a couple things. One, they're worried it might overlap too much with AOPA's existing airport support network, the ESN. Don't want to duplicate efforts.
Right.
But maybe more critical, they highlighted this ongoing problem of defining, the relationship between volunteer pilot reps and the actual airport management.
Because sometimes they see things very differently.
Totally. And they specifically mentioned the recent situation at Boulder as a prime example of that exact misalignment, that tension point. That's where the local battles really ignite.
We'll definitely get to Boulder. But sticking with the organization's health for a sec, there was one more idea, kind of low-hanging fruit.
Oh yeah, reaching out to expired members. Apparently about 4 years back, they did this combination of sending a letter and having board members make personal follow-up calls.
Ah, the personal touch.
Yeah, and they specifically mentioned Bob Kinney's effort back then was really successful at bringing people back into the fold. So the thinking is, why not just do it again? Seems like a no-brainer.
Okay, let's shift gears then from the CPA's internal health to the external fights. Runways, real estate. Our sources give us two really starkly different stories here, kind of the extremes of infrastructure work.
Yeah, big win in rural Colorado. And then this, well, pretty costly legal mess at a major urban airport.
Let's start with the win. Jackson County Airport, right? Up in Walden, 33V.
That's the one. They just announced they finished a full reconstruction of their main runway, runway 422. It's 5 out of 900 feet long.
Yeah, a big deal for them.
Huge. This isn't just patching potholes. They see it as a vital gateway for that whole rural northwestern part of Colorado. It supports air ambulance, wreck flying, and, really critically, aerial firefighting.
Right, essential services. Now, the funding part is really interesting here. You mentioned it was a $5.7 million project, but it wasn't eligible for the usual FAA money.
Correct. And that's what makes it such a fascinating case study, potentially a roadmap for other small airports. They pulled together $5.3 million in grant funding, but it came from this unique mix.
Okay, who chipped in?
It was the Colorado Division of Aeronautics, CDOT, the State Department of Transportation, the OLA, the Department of Local Affairs, and Jackson County itself. Real collaboration. It really shows that if the local need is clear and you can get state and local agencies working together, you can fund major projects even without federal help. And that investment supports, local jobs, local business revenue.
Yeah.
The impact study cited 4 jobs and about $184,000 in revenue.
Okay, so that's the success story. Now, the battleground, Boulder Airport, KBDU. The city sued the FAA to try and close it, but the court dismissed the lawsuit.
Yep, and now the city council is trying to decide whether to appeal that dismissal.
And the Soaring Society of Boulder, the SSB, they're weighing in heavily against appealing, right?
Very heavily. They're making some critical arguments to the council. First, they're saying, look, this case isn't just a simple quiet title action anymore.
Which is about land ownership history, basically.
Right, relatively straightforward.
Wow.
But now the city is essentially trying to overturn established federal aviation law. That means the fight involves these incredibly complex constitutional claims that are going to be, well, fiercely contested by the federal government.
Sounds like picking a fight you maybe can't win easily. And the cost. That's a huge factor, too.
Oh, absolutely huge. This is the real cost nugget. SSB points out that a final decision, if they appeal, likely can't even be sought before 2040.
20? Wow, that's a long time.
It is. And here's the kicker. Pursuing that case, SSB estimates, would force the city to spend tens of millions of dollars just maintaining the airport to FAA standards over that time.
Tens of millions. Why so much?
Because, and this is crucial, while they are actively suing the FAA, they cannot accept federal airport improvement grants.
So they have to pay for everything themselves out of local taxpayer money.
Exactly. The litigation itself basically puts all federal funding on ice for potentially 2 decades.
Man, that number alone, it makes you wonder if winning the legal fight costs way more than whatever they thought they'd save by closing the airport in the first place.
It's a very sobering calculation.
Yeah.
And SSB also points out, look, based on the city's own survey in 2023, only about 16% of residents actually wanted the airport closed. Doesn't sound like a huge public mandate?
Not really. What about the practical arguments? Emergency use.
Yeah, they stress that point hard.
Yeah.
Especially for things like wildfire response or, major flooding events which Boulder has seen. A simple heliport, which some city officials suggested as an alternative.
Totally inadequate for that scale of operation.
Completely.
Yeah.
You need the capacity for larger fixed-wing aircraft, complex air operations, things you just can't do from a small helipad.
And it's good they're highlighting the steps already being taken on the environmental side too, right? Because noise and leaded fuel were big drivers of the opposition initially.
Absolutely. They point out the new airport manager, Eric Vences, he's actively working to get unleaded fuel options available, moving towards that 2040 phase-out goal for leaded avgas.
Okay.
Plus, noise is actually decreasing naturally. You've got quieter, light sport aircraft coming online, many electric now. And the Soaring Society itself, they use self-launching gliders, one of which is already fully electric. So the noise profile is changing.
And we shouldn't forget, Boulder isn't just any old airfield. It's world-class for soaring, right?
It really is. The SSB was literally the global vice champion in the Soaring World League. That tells you this location has unique meteorological and geographical advantages for the sport. It's a significant resource, not just a local runway. Definitely seems worth fighting to preserve that.
Okay, let's transition now from infrastructure fights to something arguably even more critical, pilot safety, specifically in the mountains.
Yeah, this piece in the source material really drills down on a subtle but deadly danger, the en route climb.
And it was prompted by some recent, very tragic accidents, wasn't it? That Piper Cherokee crash in Wyoming just last month, September 2025.
Right, and they also mentioned earlier fatal crashes, bonanzas near Telluride in 2020 and Aspen in 2021.
And these often involve experienced pilots, right? It's not usually beginners making obvious mistakes. They knew the terrain was there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's so compelling about this analysis is it doesn't really focus on like engine failure or simple pilot error. It digs into a fundamental misunderstanding of physics.
Mm-hmm.
Physics while flying uphill, basically.
Mm.
The core danger boils down to this gradual, often unnoticed loss of what's called total energy.
Total energy. Okay, break that down for us. Physics, but make it practical for the cockpit.
Think of it like this. Total energy is just the sum of two things. Your kinetic energy, which is basically your airspeed,
Okay, speed.
and your potential energy, which is your altitude, specifically your height above the terrain directly below you.
Got it. Speed plus height above ground.
Right. Now, here's the subtle part. When you're flying over terrain that's gradually rising, even if your indicated altitude is constant, your height above the ground is slowly decreasing. You're losing potential energy, kind of silently.
Okay, the ground is sneaking up on you, energy-wise.
Precisely. Now, if you then need to climb, maybe the terrain gets steeper ahead, you raise the nose, what happens? You trade airspeed kinetic energy for altitude gain.
Okay.
But since you already started with less potential energy than you thought, this trade-off accelerates the loss of your total energy budget.
So that gradual slope lulls you into a false sense of security while your actual energy state is quietly dropping lower and lower.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You're looking out the window, everything seems okay, but you're not actively managing that energy budget. And the real danger hits when the terrain suddenly steepens up, which happens all the time in mountain valleys or approaching passes.
Right.
If that terrain starts rising faster than your aircraft can actually climb at that moment, you very quickly approach what's called the point of no return.
Doesn't sound good.
No.
Oh.
Pilots sometimes grimly call it dead man flying. It means you're now in such a low energy state, low airspeed, rapidly decreasing terrain clearance that literally no action can save you.
Wow. Not even full power.
Doesn't matter. Full power, trying a steep turn to get away, even trying to dive,
Yeah.
none of it works. You simply don't have the energy margin left to maneuver away from impact. The outcome becomes unavoidable, regardless of how powerful your engine is or what the density altitude might be.
So the critical takeaway is that this isn't necessarily about the plane's maximum capability. It's about letting yourself get into an energy state where none of that capability matters anymore.
That's the heart of it. You've flown into an energy box canyon. But thankfully, the source offers two very simple, very practical solutions to prevent this entire scenario. And they both focus on solving the energy problem before you get close to the high terrain.
Okay, what are they? Option one.
Option one is for when you're departing an airport near high terrain. The technique is take off and climb to your safe crossing altitude while staying in the traffic pattern. Circle over the airport if you need to.
Ah, so stay close to the runway.
Exactly. The absolute key safety factor there is if you find your climb performance just isn't cutting it, maybe it's hotter than forecast or you're heavier, the runway is right there, immediately available for landing.
Makes total sense. The author mentions using this at places like Telluride or Creed.
Yep, high-altitude airports where you're immediately facing rising terrain. Standard procedure for safety-conscious mountain pilots.
Okay, and option two. This is more for en route flying.
Right. If you're already flying along and know you have high terrain ahead, the solution is simply to start your climb much earlier, far enough away from the terrain so that you reach your planned cruise altitude and cruise airspeed well before you get there.
So you hit the mountains already high and fast?
Precisely. You want to arrive at the gates of the mountains in a high total energy state. Maximize both your altitude and your speed before you cross the critical ridges or passes. The author gives the example of flying back to Grand Junction from the Front Range, starting the climb way back, planning to be at, say, 14,500 feet before even getting close to Corona Pass.
So the core principle is always approach high terrain with energy to spare. Never try to outclimb it from close in and below.
That's the lesson. Manage your energy proactively. Don't let the terrain manage it for you.
Yeah, that distinction, managing energy versus just relying on engine power.
Yeah.
That's a really profound takeaway. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, let's touch on one other bit of community news from the sources. The Flying Musicians Association, FMA, they're opening up nominations for a scholarship.
Yeah, the FMA Solo Program Scholarship for 2026. It's a pretty cool program, actually.
What's it do?
It supports high school students who are also really talented musicians. It funds their flight training basically up through their first solo flight, usually about, 15 hours of dual instruction.
Nice. Is there a connection they make between music and flying?
There is. They had this belief, and it makes a lot of sense, that the kind of discipline, the intense practice, the concentration you need to be a good musician,
Yeah.
those are the exact same attributes you need to be a successful and, importantly, a safe pilot. Focused repetition builds skill in both areas.
I can see that. Discipline is discipline. Okay, and finally, there was a quick recap of a CPA fly-in trip down to New Mexico.
Yeah, they went to Alamogordo back in September. Sounds like they had some weather challenges, high winds, even some flooding, but they still managed to hit some cool spots.
Like what?
The New Mexico Space History Museum. Turns out a lot of the really early U.S. space program work actually started right there.
Huh, interesting.
And they also toured White Sands National Park, which connects to a really neat archaeological find.
Yeah, what was that?
They confirmed the discovery there of these fossilized footprints, human footprints, alongside mammoth and saber-toothed tiger prints dated back 23,000 years.
Wow, 23,000 years.
Yeah, apparently it's the oldest known definitive evidence of humans in North America. Pretty amazing thing to see where it was found. Just shows how GA can connect you to these unique spots.
Definitely does. Oh, and something about pistachios.
Huh, yeah, a little bit of agricultural science on the side.
Yeah.
They visited McGinn's pistachio land and learned that pistachios aren't actually native there. Successful farming relies on grafting them onto other compatible tree rootstocks.
Grafting, okay.
And apparently, once grafted, those trees can live for like 200 to 500 years. A little bit of trivia.
Always learning something new. Okay, so let's tie this all together for you, the listener. What have we unpacked today?
Well, we looked at the internal workings, the need for organizational tweaks like that 501c3 foundation idea to really unlock funding for education.
Right. Then we contrasted those two big infrastructure stories, the local funding success up at Jackson County versus the potentially crippling legal and financial burden facing Boulder as it fights the FAA. Big stakes there.
Huge stakes. And finally, that really critical safety lesson about total energy and mountain flying. Understanding that gradual energy loss and how to prevent getting into that point of no return.
Manage the energy, don't just rely on power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if we connect that funding piece back to the bigger picture, remember Jackson County Airport got that massive $5.7 million runway rebuild done without FAA money. They used creative state and local grant collaborations.
Yeah, that was impressive.
So that success story, it really raises a provocative question, doesn't it? If local and state governments can step up and fund essential aviation needs when federal options aren't available or aren't chosen, what does that suggest about the real power of local communities to shape their airport's future?
Especially when you compare it to Boulder, which is
Right.
facing huge costs precisely because it's rejecting federal grants while fighting the FAA.
Right. Does that Jackson County model suggest that maybe local self-reliance, or at least state-level reliance, holds a key to navigating these conflicts differently?
Something definitely worth mulling over. Local control versus federal entanglement, maybe.
Perhaps.
Yeah,
Food for thought as you digest these strategic, legal, and safety insights.
absolutely. Well, that's our deep dive for today. Thank you for joining us.
We hope you found it valuable.
We'll catch you next time for more essential knowledge extracted just for you.